Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. The band is back together. Joel has returned, and Rafael Nadal is in the semifinals after a 5-set victory over Denis Shapovalov. Joel, I feel like I gotta give you the floor. No setup. Do you have anything to say to the people?
It's very nice to be back. I missed being on the show. I was busy relocating, and that's very exciting and a lot of activity, but it's great to be back. You guys were great in my absence, some really terrific guests and lots of thoughts, and it's fun to be back. And I think as a left-hander, myself, how fitting that we're going to look back on a match of two lefties between Nadal and Denis.
Yeah, that's right. So Nadal struggles with the heat in this one after the first set. I think the opening set was an incredible level by Rafa. But Amy, how could he get through this match? Why did he get through this match despite not being able to move much and it was a struggle physically?
He took his time, Gil. He took his time. I mean, if there's anything that we have learned about Rafael Nadal, it's that he has his way of doing things and he is going to run down that shot clock. But really, it starts before that, because I've written about this before. It starts, not a lot of people know this, but it starts before the competitors even take the court. Rafa is not going to be the first person out for the coin flip. You are. He's going to make you wait. He's going to wait, and then he'll come out. Between changeovers, time will be called. He will stretch it. And between first serve and second serve, there's no clock. So he's just going to wait, bounce. And Shapovalov, it was like easy pickings to get this guy going and get him upset. I mean, it was like taking candy from a baby. And he took the bait and he got very upset. It started to start the second set. And then Shapovalov got very upset when Rafa took the medical timeout right before the fifth set. And Rafa broke immediately. So that's what he does. But I will say, he plays within the rules. He walks right up to the line and he plays within the rules.
Denis has a real upside, I think, in his match energy management departments, because he played well to obviously get back in the match and take it to a fifth set. There's a saying a pro said to me, he's talking about another pro. He says, sometimes this guy was so convinced he had to hit big shots, he couldn't take a match when it was being handed to him. And not that Rafa was handing it to it all at Denis, but you could see when Nadal was wavering, his energy, particularly throughout that fourth set, was really going. And sometimes I think Denis tries to hit so big all the time, and big returns. And sometimes I think, I don't know, I guess it's the calibration of getting the ball in play, making the guy run, also subduing the energy. You're playing Nadal. Nadal's not going to change his between point rituals for anyone. So a fascinating match. Really very engaging.
I agree. And just the focus. Okay. It's a 4-hour match and there's no substitutions. So you have to focus for 4 hours. And that's something that each and every one of our three are great at, because I don't think you can be a really good player without the ability to do that. And Denis really did seem much more in contrast, up and down, distracted at times, just not focused at times with his tactics. He said after the match that he didn't notice that Nadal was struggling physically, which I don't fully blame him for. I get it, because it's not like he's peering on the other side of the court, and perhaps even if Nadal's forehand speeds went down and he wasn't moving quite as well, maybe Shapo would have just thought, well, it's hot, I'm getting him tired, and not thinking much more of it. But at the same time, there just feels, I agree, Joel, it felt like Shapovalov didn't have a pulse on that match, because he didn't need to do as much as he was attempting to do. And as a result, the unforced errors were the killer for him.
How do you not read that energy? I mean, you see some of Nadal's shots. I mean, here we were half a planet away, and seeing how some of Nadal's depth, some of his angles, some of his movements, some of his misses were at extreme. I mean, you could see him. That's an interesting thing about how a player reads the energy of the opponent. And you can't overread it, because you got to pay attention to your stuff. But at the same time, it's just interesting how Denis didn't get himself, and he certainly started the fifth terribly. I mean, this happens. We see this a lot in tennis, right? The guy makes the comeback, and now he's even the match, and then he kind of has a natural kind of letdown.
Well, you can be darn sure that if Novak or Rafa himself or Roger were playing someone and he perceived that that opponent was struggling physically, any one of our three would take it to him, put the pedal to the metal, really dial it in. So you're right, Gill, the fact that Denis claims that he didn't see that Rafa was struggling, then that's your problem, Denis. And I mean, Rafa had a career high 11 double faults in this match. Something was off. And it may have been a function of Rafa trying to go for too much on his second serve, but it all worked out in the end.
Let's get to the double faults in a second, but what about Rafa asking to play in the day and then the heat becoming a big problem? I mean, obviously, probably in hindsight, he wouldn't have made that request, and he would have said, let's play at night. But he likes the daytime conditions because the court's lively and his forehand really is very effective in the daytime with how it jumps off the court. And we see how he likes to play first strike tennis off of his first serve, and especially against a guy like Denis, who doesn't return great. I could see why he wanted the day. And normally he likes the heat, but it's kind of funny how that came back and became a problem for him.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Nadal, you're right. The court speed, that time of day, that's a neat time of day I always like that time of day at the majors, that period from about 3 to 6, and the sun is moving, and it's a very evocative, and it's nice. The day's gotten on its way towards night, but yeah, Nadal, it was really hot there yesterday. I mean, it was nearing 100 degrees, and I think to look at the serve thing, I think Nadal's legs. I mean, I think you get a little weary. I mean, I think when pro tennis players double fault, it's not because they don't know technically how to serve. It's the legs not giving them the strength they need to really do it, and they kind of arm it, and just doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that's probably a good explanation. However, if you look at the long-term trends, this is something that I think should be looked at. But Nadal's double fault rate was a career worst in 2020, but it wasn't bad at all. It was 3.4%. He was serving more aggressively. I thought that was a good serving year for Nadal. Last year, it was up at 4.9%, and I thought there were matches and moments where the double faults were a real issue. And in this match, hitting 11, and I don't know what the rate was at the end of the match, but I think it was around 10%. That's obviously too many by no matter, unless you're going for second serves like Maxime Cressy, that's too many. So I do think there's a pattern there that Nadal will want to reverse. He'll want to get back into that 2020 range of kind of like a 3.5%.
Well, let's go back to the X's and O's of this match. He's playing another lefty, so his common play that he likes to do of the wide ad court serve is not quite going to generate the traction for him the way now he's going to, in the semi, he's going to play Berrettini. Okay, here we go. Back to usual.
Yeah.
Before we, get to X's and O's, though, I don't want to quite leave this issue of the time that Nadal takes without getting you guys' take on this, because a lot of people are asking me, is Rafa cheating? Is he, going outside the rules as they are set? If you ask my opinion, and I like to call him like I see him, he is walking right up to the line. And I think sometimes he'll test the chair umpire to see, what are you going to let me get away with? And there's a lot of discretion there. And just to throw this in there, of course, Carlos Bernardes, who officiated this match, and Nadal, they have a history. In 2015, they got into it a little bit when Bernardes, I believe, gave him a code violation, and Rafa ended up having to change his shorts on court in front of 7,000 people. Rafa then asked that Bernardes not be put on any of his matches. They made up, they talked, they were all good. Bernardes actually had a heart attack several months ago. Rafa said some really nice things about him, and they were all good. So the last thing Carlos wants to do is get into another dust up. So, since 2015, Rafa's won a lot more slams, and he's going to get the leeway, Dennis. And if you ask me, no, Rafa's not cheating. There's one area though where I think he needs to be watched. And that is that the game is supposed to be played at server's pace. That's a rule. And you will see sometimes, I didn't see it in this match, but you will see sometimes as the receiver, as the returner, Rafa will put his arm up like that, like, wait, I'm not ready. I'm still doing my stuff. That is not within the rules. So that one I do think needs to be watched.
Oh, you can say the server, you can sometimes say the server, I'm not ready. You don't have to automatically scramble and get there. You can do that, but you're right. That's a vague area. If you're doing it constantly, you got to have a little, hey, what's going on here? Because, servers can't quick serve. I mean, you can't just quick serve. You got to make sure you're both kind of set. But Nadal, look, these great players, and we watch them so closely because they play so many matches. They do so well. You see the ways they kind of push the rules, just like Nadal, like the waiting to go out there, and then he's jumping up and down, and then he's running. It's like he's creating his environment. And there's this kind of hierarchy of excellence within the game that people comply to.
I guess my issue is if you look at the average time between serves, Nadal was at 31 seconds at the time of the complaint. Shapovalov was at, I think, 28 or maybe 29, and I think they showed it twice, and it might have been both. So 2-second difference, really? That seems to take the credibility out of the complaint. And also, there's a serve clock now. There's a shot clock that I like to call it a serve clock. It's not a shot clock. But anyway, wasn't that supposed to remove this from the sport, this whole thing? So, I mean, I understand, it's when the umpire calls the score, but to me, it's finding something to complain about. I don't see a lot of meat on the bone for Shapovalov to grab onto here and complain about.
Well, this was meant to change things. You're right. When does the serve clock start? When does that start? Oh, I have to get my towel now. Remember this, we're in the COVID era of getting your own towel. And there are these certain things, and these guys are so used to their ritualistic 27 seconds, 29 seconds. They're so dialed in on that. And then you add in excessive heat and the need to gather a little time before. It's interesting. It's a interesting deal.
We won't go long on this, but I just want to see, are we pro serve clock here?
Yeah.
No, we can't go long. We can't go more than 30 seconds on this topic.
But I just want to say also that Dennis said to Carlos Bernardes, you guys are all corrupt. Dennis could have very easily been given a code violation for that. And there were some antics. At one point, he stopped everything and called Nadal to the net. That's not really in the rules, so... like the goose, like the gander, or whatever the expression is. So
what is the expression? Yeah, I didn't know.
I don't know. There's something with a goose and a gander. Something my mom says.
No clue. Never heard of it.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's what it is.
All right. I think for Dennis, this gets to Dennis's match management thing. I think calling him corrupt, getting caught up. Hey, Dennis, get your first serve in, make some more of these returns on break points, quit with the extracurricular things. And of course, when this happens, and it's so, this is why one of the reasons the game is so great, it's a little bit like the same thing we even see in recreational tennis where people are complaining about, hey, these aren't the right balls. or it's windy, or oh, I left my power drink in the clubhouse. I mean, these kind of things that happen. And so obviously this is Denis kind of like reacting to the pressure in kind of like in these sideways ways instead.
Yes.
And see, and what the champions do, I'm not going to react to the pressure. I'm going to dictate the terms of the pressure. So I'm going to create these rituals that I will control. That's how they deal with it. Whether it's back in the day, it was going to the towel or fiddling with the strings. All these things but this is my house. So Denis has got to learn his way of managing that and keeping the even keel, because otherwise he's gonna spike, and his game is spiky enough anyway, which makes it exciting. I mean, God, that guy, he burns fuel. He's like a big F-14 or something, F-15. He's just amazing.
I agree with all of that. I will say, in terms of what he did after the match, when he sat down in front of the press and really doubled down on all of his sentiment that he had on the court, I do hesitate to go too hard on and read into too much of what he said, because he should have been absolutely distraught with losing that match based on how it went. And you take someone fresh off the court and ask them about these things, you do need to give them a little bit of a pass for being irrational in that moment. Because again, I mean, if I'm Denis, he also cracked a racket after match point. I would have been more concerned if Shapo wasn't really furious with himself. That would have been more concerning to me than had he been basically, I mean, he should have been disgusted with losing that match. So the fact that he was, I think, is actually a good thing.
Well, but then it's how you then manage it. I mean, yeah, upset, yes, but where do you go with that, and how do you really learn from it? I think that the challenge for players, and hopefully Denis then will like peel away all the emotion, all the anger and the victimization and the Rafa this and the that, and just okay, what's the business lesson here? What's the business lesson here? What's the lesson that I can really learn and go to work on, and put that in and pull it and push aside the emotional aspects of it and just get down to working. And that's, again, to get back to our three, that's why they're the three, because they've all done that. And the great players do that. They peel away the emotion, they take away the upset, and they get back to work. And so I hope, I mean, Denis, I'm constantly impressed by how someone who plays like him continues to generate some outstanding results, because there's a guy who drives every one-handed backhand he ever hit in his life, and drives, returns, and so much energy.
He's a very, very unique player to watch. We'll move on. One more thing, Amy. Should Denis apologize?
No, I think maybe to Carlos Bernardes for calling him corrupt, but not to Rafa. Denis this is why Denis is Denis, and he's never been in the final of a Grand Slam, because he's not there yet with his emotions and his court conduct, and how to. I mean, the whole time I was watching this whole thing, I was thinking Rafa has this sort of neutral to stern look on his face, but what he's thinking is probably, I got this guy right where I want him. He's fallen right into my trap. So now players like Shapovalov need to take note of how Rafa handled that situation and do that yourself.
Well, and compete. And when you get kind of upset about all these other factors, you're not really giving yourself the best chance to compete. And I think Denis, I like to think that players who were that high up the mountain as Denis, that they know that, it's just that they learn it yet at another level. Now I'm playing the 20-time slam champ. I mean, in the big arena, and we're in a fifth set, and it's really hot. And how do I then gather myself to compete effectively, so I don't end up writing my story about how I got victimized by all this stuff, by the world was conspiring to keep me from winning, and how I really go about do it. And I hold hope. I mean, Denis, sometimes I nickname for him, he's like live ball. He's like a live ball player. He just is like, hitting shots and going big, and it's good, and he improves, and he's more fit, and he's comfortable. He's getting more comfortable at the net, and so it'll just be interesting to see how he continues to. But how he now that's the emotional piece too, the energy management.
Let's shift gears to the semi. But before we talk about Matteo Berrettini, who beat Gael Monfils in a 5-setter with the same scoreline almost that Nadal beat Shapovalov, with winning the first 2 sets, losing the next 2, and winning the 5th. What about just Nadal's physicality in general? And I don't know if we've talked enough about how we're interpreting this heat issue. Does it mean anything going forward? Is it a product of the preparation and how few matches he's played in the last 6 months? And is there any concern going into the semifinal? But, I was thinking, I guess, in context, that in the Tsitsipas match in Australia last year, the same thing happened where his energy was really pretty low in the second half of that match. In the Djokovic match, we know how his energy was basically depleted in the 4th set at Roland Garros. And now I was almost thinking, oh my God, it's kind of a third in a row where the energy is an issue. And this time you had the heat, which luckily I think everyone was relieved to know that was the reason, nothing else. But how are we interpreting the physical challenges that Nadal faced in this match?
The only thing I can do is go by what Nadal himself says. And after the match, he said, yeah, I got sick. It was, like a heat stroke type of situation, but I got my treatment. I got over it. I felt good, and I feel good right now. And he said 2 days rest will be perfect. That'll be great. I use that. But physically, I feel great. That's what he said.
It's interesting. It's interesting in tennis. When a player is young and just coming up, we wonder how it's going to be for them because they're new to it, and so it's day to day. We wonder how maybe the emotional aspect of it, the physical we think they have, and then they get into kind of the thick part of their career, and it's a quarter, and it's a semi, and here they go, and now they reach this other end in Nadal, and we wonder he's day to day, and we see, and we don't know, and he says that, and of course that's the proper thing for. Like, he wouldn't say anything else. He wouldn't say anything else. He wouldn't say, well, you know what? Gee, am I tired? Boy, this feels a lot different than when I beat Fernando Verdasco in 5 sets 13 years ago. I'm not 13, I'm older now, but say that, put on the face, that extra day, that'll help. And then we'll kind of see. And then we can dig into a little bit more of the whole Berrettini question, because Berrettini, there's certain things that Berrettini does that remind me of Denis, and certain things he does that don't. But yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about recovery. That's just me. I think recovery isn't going to be an issue with 2 days. I will say, I have lingering questions about if there's a 2019 US Open final-like match between Nadal and Medvedev in the final. Is Rafa going to have the physicality? And by the way, it's not about age for me. It's really not. It's about his preparation, not really being what it would normally be. I mean, he is still a player who is coming off injury, and probably, maybe he's at 100% fitness, but would it really shock me if he was at 80 or 90? And, you just don't know until he gets in a real war where he has to move a lot. The points were very short in this match also. So hopefully in moving forward, or not hopefully, but the points are likely to be longer, but hopefully it's not as hot. So we'll see what happens, but that's definitely something to watch. As far as Berrettini as a matchup, let's get into that. It's they've played one time before. It was at the US Open in 2019, and Nadal won in 3 sets. But Berrettini's developed a lot since then. So Joel, how do you think Djokovic and Berrettini match up stylistically?
Nadal, and I think it's a.
What did I say?
It's a neat match. I think you went no. You said Novak accidentally. Oh. But I think
Freudian slip.
I think Berrettini.
I'm so sorry if I can just interrupt. I'm so used to saying that. Yeah. They've played 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
So
yeah, same time next slam. But I think first, to get back to a little bit to Dennis can learn from Berrettini, because Berrettini is a guy. He seems to be a fuel burner, but what I'm really impressed, and I saw that in his Monfils match, he's becoming a match manager. I like a lot of what Berrettini does, how he manages his energy and the way he builds points. I mean, golly, and getting his way to net and the forehands. But I think from an X's and O's point, and maybe Amy, you can add more to this. Nadal sees that backhand, says, there's something for me there. There's a place I can go. Let's see what that does. Let's see what you got, Matteo. Gonna hit. Guess how many cross-court forehands I'm gonna hit.
And our last guest who provides strategy for Berrettini was Craig O'Shaughnessy, was telling us that can be a strategy against Berrettini, or a game plan to put him in the backhand cage. And almost nobody's better at doing that than Nadal. But specifically, they've been working on how Matteo can get out of that locked in pattern. And, one is to change direction. Another is to run around and hit forehand. And you're right, Joel, he's improved. Berrettini has improved, and he was already quite good. Look at the year he had last year. So I don't anticipate that it will be the straight sets dominant situation that was at the 2019 US Open. And I was at that match, and I wanted to see a good match. And it was a first set tiebreak, but beyond that, it wasn't a very good match. And I think it will be a better match this time.
Well, Berrettini's in that phase. He's improving by the month. I mean, he's been making so much progress after the last couple of years. And it's funny, just a tip back to our buddy Craig O'Shaughnessy. He's like the Nadal problem solver. I think he helped Dustin Brown beat Nadal at Wimbledon. He helped Novak. Now he's with Berrettini. It's like I'm gonna anytime I got to play Nadal, call Craig. He can, and those are three different styles: Brown, Djokovic, and now Berrettini. And you're right. So the question is, how does he get out of that cage, and whether does he slice the backhand down the line, but does he slice it well enough to deny Rafa forehands? I think there are going to be some really fun patterns to this match. You got two guys with great forehands, and then I think Berrettini, we're no longer thinking as much about the nerve factor with him. I mean, he's reached late stages. This guy's been to the U.S. Open semis, been to the Wimbledon finals. I mean, he's played high stakes matches. Monfils can be a tough out, and made a big comeback, and Berrettini played a great fifth set to close out that match. So I'm intrigued. And I think but there is the X factor of Rafa, not just so much the recovery as much as then the performance, and what's going on. What about the serve, and what about his own nerves? I mean, Nadal has spoken frequently over the years about his nerves.
Yeah. So first of all, I do want to echo the sentiment about Berrettini being an unbelievable player mentally these days. I mean, he is clutch. He plays the right way under pressure. He's an awesome competitor. So again, I second that. Tactically, X's and O's wise, I just don't see what he can do. I think it's such a nightmare for him when the ball gets on his backhand. There's a couple things that I've noticed specifically about his backhand. First of all, when the ball jumps over his shoulders, he loses a ton of power. He struggles to drive the ball hard. So players kick it up to his backhand, and he doesn't miss that return. He makes it, but he just doesn't get a lot on the ball when you kick it to his backhand. And Nadal's forehand is basically a kick serve, right?
So, but Gill, why is he having the success then? Like,
because it's very difficult. First of all, he makes the return, but it's not easy to get it to the backhand. But Nadal is the master at it. And again, against a lot of players, Berrettini, he can slice. Slicing against Nadal is probably what you do if you have a death wish. I mean, he is the slice killer of all slice killers. Berrettini's going to need to drive the backhand. That always leads to more errors. It's just, he's never on the ad side. I think it's going to be really difficult for Matteo because he has a backhand return. Generally, righties they just can't push him out as wide on the backhand. So now he has to hit a backhand outside the singles line very consistently. And he doesn't have the movement really to recover as well as maybe some other right-handers would. It's a bad puzzle for him.
The mix of for example, when a righty serves a kick serve to the Berrettini backhand at the ad court, Berrettini can hit it back cross court at least to a righty backhand, which, okay, Novak is one thing, but the other righty backhands, they may not hurt him as much, and then he's going to be in the rally. But then if you hit your return cross court to Nadal's forehand, unless you're productive with it, now he's instantly starting his sequence. And you're right. And Berrettini is going to have a lot. He knows how many balls are going to come to that cross court corner. You can run around them.
What is a way that this could kind of be
short
circuited? Go ahead, Gil.
Got you. On Berrettini's serve, Nadal is going to need to return exceptionally well in order to avoid that first forehand and Berrettini's early short point aggression. So as far as Berrettini being in trouble, that's mostly, in my mind, a lot of that is on Nadal's serve. And I think if Nadal executes and does everything perfectly, it's really hard for me to see Rafa not winning a massive percent of his first serve points, Berrettini being able to do nothing about it. But on Berrettini's serve, he gets that first forehand. Nadal needs to return unbelievably well to get the ball to his backhand when he's returning. So Matteo needs to take care of his own serve, which I think he can do, and then hope to just play a match in which the margins are really tight and he can get those mistakes and execute a little bit better than Nadal at the same game. At the end of the day, both players, when they get that first strike, that serve +1, especially with the way these courts are playing, they're both going to have a lot of success.
I don't think Nadal is going to be overly concerned with aiming his return to the Berrettini backhand. I don't think he's going to overly. I don't think that's going to be. I think he's going to be concerned with getting his return deep and to the middle, and maybe what he can do. Because that first serve of Berrettini is pretty good. It's gonna if Nadal if for example Berrettini serves to Nadal's backhand in the deuce court, I don't think Nadal is going to necessarily think that he has to hit the return down the line. I think he's fine if he get the ball high, heavy, deep cross court, and say, go ahead, Matteo. Really, you're gonna hit a big winner from there. I mean, I think it's an interesting form. What do you call it? It's like a power chess game. It's kind of interesting. It's like if you look at it from far away, you just think big forehands, big shots, but there's going to be some really intriguing point building going on. I'm fascinated to see, for example, how Berrettini serves, where he aims his serve and how he builds his points and what he does to do that. And I think he's a new kind of player. I think there's something Berrettini's bringing to the mix of the game, and it's interesting to learn more about that. But I really enjoy watching him going about building. He's got the big serve, but he's got to manage the backhand and the forehand. It's very interesting.
Well, Gil, remember our previous guest and your excellent question to him, which was in 0 to 4 shots, is it that you're saying that, okay, the majority of the game is played within 0 to 4 shots? Are you trying to be more aggressive, or are you trying to never miss within 0 to 4? Do you remember what his answer was? If you listen very carefully.
Survival.
That's right.
Plus some offensive factors. I mean, it's
right, but
it's a tug of war.
Dig a little deeper. There was something else that if you listen really carefully, what he was saying was that there's basically he said 4 different, but 2 different kinds of points that are played. And one is first serve points and one is second serve points. Completely different matches within the match, basically. So, the points that are played on Nadal's first serve or Berrettini's first serve are one type of point, and then the match that's played on second serve points, that's where the war is going to be fought.
I agree with that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So then we got to see what really goes on, how those second serve points are managed, probably by Berrettini most of all, because he's the underdog and he's got to figure out a way to problem solve Nadal, right? Because Nadal, we kind of have an idea of how Nadal plays his second serve points.
Yeah,
You know,
in the Berrettini Djokovic matches, the first serve points won have been very similar. Both of them very, very efficient. It's the second serve points won where Djokovic has won those matches.
right. Very interesting. This is going to be I'm really looking forward to that match. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting match because you've got, Nadal is the experienced warrior and he wants to get to the finals again, etc. And here's Berrettini who's in this ascent. That's the thing that's exciting about it. We don't know where the limit is yet. And so he's in that stage of ascent, and we're going to see yet another quiz for him.
You guys just, I'm like thinking out loud and stuff is dawning on me now, but it was Gill that might have said that, a lefty forehand to Berrettini's backhand is basically a kick serve, but it's Joel that's actually,
Nadal's.
what did I say?
Only Nadal's forehand is like a kick
Right.
serve. I can't give most lefties that much credit.
But his serve is not a kick serve. And it's Joel that has said to me that Nadal doesn't really hit a kick serve because he's a lefty. So I really do think that it's the second serve points, Nadal serving to Berrettini on second serve. That's the whole key to the whole match. Because it's not going to be the typical kick serve that rises to the righty's backhand. It's Nadal's second serve, which is, he's the king of second serve points won, but it's not because of the serve itself. It's because of what he does after.
So the question is, what does Berrettini, that the chess game becomes, and we really dig into it, how does Berrettini go about hitting those second serve returns, as opposed, like you look at like Novak, for example, takes that second serve of the court and he can drill it down the line and go and find the Rafa backhand and then begin to dictate. Berrettini, we're going to see, does he go wide here? Does he go there? Does he do what are the things he does? And I wonder, I'm assuming that Berrettini's found a lefty to practice returns against for about a half hour a day, and hit about 200 of them.
I think Dennis is available.
Dennis is on the next flight home, Amy.
I'm sorry, Dennis. I've been rough on this.
It's been a tough Dennis show. Not a good Dennis show. One of my main critiques for Matteo has been I want to see him be more aggressive on the second serve return. Just throughout these early stages of his career, that's been a bone to pick for me throughout. So let's see if he can do that, if he can not just be neutral, because neutral against Nadal, that's not great. Aggressive, offensive against Nadal, now he's in a decent place. And by the way, Rafa's second serve return position and the things he's doing there, that has been a storyline all tournament. And we'll see how that goes after the match. We'll dissect that and we'll see what these guys do tactically. Can't wait. That'll do it for this episode of 3. We hope you enjoyed, and remember that we're available on all podcast platforms. Leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. It's greatly appreciated. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.